Okay, dear colleagues, I propose to start because now at least Romanian time, this is 2:30. So let's say good morning to America, good afternoon to Europe and Africa, good evening to Asia. I guess no one from Australia today. My name is Zsolt Szornoki. I'm the Secretary General of the Association of the European Election Officials, and really welcome you in the online area, and also colleagues sitting around here in Bucharest. And of course, we really appreciate those you coming in person to Bucharest to celebrating not only the 30th anniversary of the ACEEO, but also attending the General Assembly meeting, which we just completed a few minutes ago, and also attending at the annual conference tomorrow and on Thursday. And I do hope that colleagues remotely can also join to the different session on Wednesday and Thursday as well. So 30 years, that's definitely a lot. 1991, I was not there, not because I'm too young, but I just joined to the election arena in 1993. But it was in 1991 when Senator Clifton and Richard Sudriet, the founder president of the IFS, decided to support the creation of the associations around the world, so supporting the founding of the different regional election association. And that was another good moment that Richard Sudriet met with Zoltán Tóth, who was at that time the head of the Hungarian Electoral Office. And these two meetings was let's say very shortly saying the foundation of the ACEEO. So among us, it's only Richard Sudriet is the witness who will join us today as well to the honorary crop later today. So this is the foundation of the very early days of the ACEEO, and of course I do not want to bore you with the other 30 years, but definitely a lot happened. So we really appreciate since the beginning the support of the IFS, but later today, of course, we also had a very good contact with already or later established international and regional organization, or even at the later stage, we had a privilege to support the foundation of some organization like the Arab EMBs. So since the beginning, we had a very fruitful cooperation with the international and the regional organization. So we thought that the best anniversary of this 30 years, or the best celebration of these 30 years, it's to invite the colleagues from our partner organization, and of course celebrate the anniversary with some works, because the free and fair election, we still need constant work and discussion. As Richard Sudriet said some years ago, there is no such thing as an electoral nirvana. So we definitely have to continue to work together to support the free and fair election. So what we are doing into the next 85 or 30 minutes, that we already shared 3 topics with our colleagues. One is just looking back a little bit about what kind of experience we gathered in the past 30 years. Then the second topic would be the role of the international organization and how we can strengthen the cooperation among us. And the third topic is also very simple, future of election. Of course, we know that these three topics might require somehow discussion one by one, but no, we have only around 1.5 hours. So we try to do this Mission Impossible today. So we do a first round when we are focusing on the past 30 years. So the question what we shared with the colleagues was that what aspects or trends might be highlighted from the past 30 years in terms of promoting free and fair election globally, and of course, if you have any experiences regarding to the ACEEO region as well. So you all have 3 minutes only. Please try to respect this 3 minutes limit. And I'm calling the first round in alphabetical order of the association or of the organization. So let's jump first to Seoul, to the Association of World Election Bodies. And I'm calling the advisor to the Secretary General, Mr. Shang Kim. Kim, please take the mic and the screen.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, it is okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this invitation, and Mr. Secretary General. For the first occasion, I would like to point out a few important aspects we have observed over the past 30 years. To begin with, election has become a global norm. Election has been introduced and reintroduced to an increasing number of countries. Many countries have restored their election systems after the third and the fourth wave of global democratization. And many authoritarian states have also adopted election systems, acknowledging the fact that elections could strengthen the legitimacy of their rule. According to our research, 90% of the countries in the world, which are about 180 countries, are electing their leaders and representatives through national election. The second aspect is about the use of technology in elections. Over the periods of time, technology has been significantly developed. New advanced technologies have been applied to almost every sector and every field of the society. Election is not an exception. We have witnessed many technologies widely used in election management and election administration, computerized voting and counting systems, result transmission technologies, information and communication technologies used in election information systems, and many other applications. The list goes on. So these technologies are designed to increase in the efficiency, accuracy, and transparency of managing elections. But of course, misuse of those technologies could cause the opposite results. And last but not least, globalization is another aspect. In elections, we have witnessed an increasing volume of exchange and cooperation between and among national election management bodies and international organizations. The Association of World Election Bodies, ACEEEO, is an example of globalization in elections. So ACEEEO was founded in 2013 as a global level organization with its mission to identify latest trends, challenges, and development in democratic electoral management, and to facilitate appropriate exchange of experience and expertise among members. Currently, it has 118 member EMBs from 108 countries. To sum up, among many aspects and trends over the last 3 decades, I think the increasing number of countries holding elections and technological aspect and globalization are important phenomena to note. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, especially mentioning the development of the use of the technologies, which is a I think there's a clear evidence of the development of the past 30 years. I'm calling now the colleagues on Arab EMBs, especially Mr. Hisham Kuhail, who is the chairman of the executive board of the Arab EMBs. Hisham, you have the floor, please.
Hello, good afternoon, Zolti. I would like at the beginning to congratulate you on your 30th anniversary. As you know, ACEEO has been instrumental to Arab EMB in its initial steps of formation. The cumulative experience of ACEEO presented in the preparation meetings of the Arab EMB was of great help to the drafting of its charter. I'm glad to report that ACEEO as well has been also forthcoming in the signing of the first MOU with Arab EMB, thus becoming our first international partner. Since the inception of Arab EMB in 2015, started with 6 founding members and doubled by 2020, the organization carried out thematic discussions on different topics such as voter registration, enhancing women participation in election, independency of EMBs, media and elections, and others. It also organized several regional election visit program in Jordan, Tunisia, and Mauritania, and provided technical support programs to its members. Arab EMB has managed an impact within the region it serves. I'm sure all other regional organizations do the same. But I want to pose something in this very important occasion, that it's true that there is a number of regional electoral organizations, each serving a specific region with almost common aims and objectives as ours. And it's true that we meet in international forums like this very important forum, but I believe there is still a need for a platform for such regional bodies. Such platforms would aim at sharing and discussing common issues, more specifically promoting free and fair election, not only at the regional level, but also globally. I would like to use this leader forum to initiate, or that forum to be the spark of creating such a platform, call it a framework, call it body of electoral regional organizations with an agreed upon charter that set its aim, objective, and scope of work. And I'm referring to this a platform in my second intervention. Thank you, Zolti.
Thank you very much, Hisham, and from our side, of course, we are very glad that we can work together. This was absolutely from our side a very good time that what we spent together, and to support the creation of the Arab EMBs and share our experiences with you. And also thanks to your proposal, which we didn't discuss before, but I think this would be our intention as well, to somehow strengthen the cooperation between the international organization. But that we can discuss under the second topic. Let's move forward to Strasbourg, the Council of Europe, the Venice Commission, and I'm calling out longtime friend Pierre Garrone, who is now the head of the division of the election and political parties in the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe. Pierre, thank you for joining us, and please take your mic screen.
Thank you very much. The question raised is actually a good question for me as representative of the Venice Commission, since this commission has addressed the issue of recurrent challenges and problematic issues in the electoral field thoroughly in 2 reports prepared by an eminent German professor, Mr. Michael Krenrich. The reports date back to 2006 and 2020, so the last one is quite recent, and most sources relate to ACEEO countries. According to the 2006 report, so we can see a bit the evolution. In most of Council of Europe member states, elections and referendums were conducted satisfactorily and in accordance with international standards. However, there was still substantial room for improvement in regard to both electoral legislation and administration in a number of countries. The main areas in which improvements could be made were enhancing the independence, professionalism, and legitimacy of electoral administration, ensuring fair and equal conditions for the political contestants in the pre-election period, improving voter registration and voting procedures, paying more attention to the post-election period, and lastly, protecting women's and minority rights. Concerning legislation, what was primarily required was clarifying and simplifying complex provisions, as well as removing inconsistencies and unnecessary repetitions. But still more important, I think, proper implementation of electoral law hinged on the will and the commitment of the electoral authorities and other election stakeholders. And much still remained to be done in this area in order to build a culture of respect for the law and democratic procedures in some countries. So intensive training was recommended for the staff, but also voter education. In 2020, the report concluded that challenges remain still in relation to the various fundamental principles of electoral law, unfortunately, so universal, equal, direct, secret, and free suffrage. But concerning universal suffrage, a tendency can be identified to grant the right to vote in national elections to all citizens where possible, both legally and de facto. So the remaining restrictions are increasingly under discussion. Concerning equal suffrage and freedom of voters to form an opinion, this is a crucial point. Main challenges are still the distortion of political competition conditions, especially through the misuse of administrative resources and unbalanced coverage in the media. And then a new and negative campaigning, and what is new, of course, the inadaptation of legislation to the challenges of the digital environment, which was not so developed 15 years ago. And still, freedom of voters to express their votes and free suffrage continue to be challenged from time to time in the voting, as well as in the counting process and tabulation of results. And also a point which was still under discussion was the complaints bills, which could be improved, and also the standing should be given very broadly. So the general evolution, what is it? It's not linear, it's different according to the countries, of course, which have to be addressed separately. There is progress on some aspects, but also erosion of democracy in some countries. I say erosion of democracy, not of liberal democracy as the report, because I don't see what is a democracy which was not would not be liberal. Actually, there was the socialist democracy in the past and the authoritarian democracy of Pinochet, but what is it? Let us, however, hope for the best and do what is in our power. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Of course, the different legal analysis and studies of the prepared by the Venice Commission, I think it's always a model of all of us or the national legislators as well. And of course, also the electoral management bodies, of course, not only in Europe, but around the world. Let's now move to Africa, to the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy, the ACEEEO. I'm calling the head of the election and political processes of the ACEEEO, Mr. Baidesu Sukulwe. Baidesu, please take the floor.
Right. Hello. Good morning, everybody.
Yes, we can hear you.
What we have been doing, I'm talk maybe about our perspective as an international organization working on the area of election. Lastly, we have been supporting regional organization at continental level, also at sub-regional level. What we can say about our support, technical support to those organizations is that the level of democracy or the quality of election depend on the region or even in some specific country. While in Southern Africa, we still have a good level. We still have election that can be assessed as credible and fair. In Central Africa, in West Africa, we still have a lot to do to reach the level we want to be in. Especially in West Africa, in Central Africa, I think we are regressing since a few years because the trust in electoral process is now low. People don't trust that we can develop ourselves or we can increase our democracy only by election, as it is unfortunately shown by the support from the international community. And then I think we have this feeling after my assessment that we still have a lot to do, maybe to put a focus on more synergy between those who are supporting electoral process democratization within the continent. Otherwise, while an organization can have assessment on the electoral process, we can have some countries, some specific countries or organizations giving another assessment, and we don't know even which are truly the criteria we are using to assess those elections. You know what happened in Kenya in 2008 or during the last presidential election, while for all the observers, it was a fair and credible election, and to hear a few days later that to the Constitutional Court, it was the worst election the country has ever organized. And then we have maybe as international community, as organizations supporting electoral process, to define more precisely criteria based on which we assess those elections.
Thank you very much, Baidesu, especially that's mentioning, of course, the question of trust, which is, I think, this is one of the key elements that we still have to work together. But let's jump to Washington, DC, and I'm calling the President and CEO of the IFS, Anthony Bembury. Mr. Bembury, very good to see you, at least via online. I do hope that we can see each other face to face as well. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Secretary General, and hello to you. Congratulations on your leadership of ACEEO on the occasion of the 30th anniversary. Greetings to all colleagues on the panel and participating in the conference. I'd like to start by paying tribute to my predecessor, Richard Soudriette, predecessor as president of IFES, who Secretary General Zelensky, as you mentioned, was instrumental in the establishment of the ACEEO. And it's a great part of the legacy of the organization of the ACEEO as well as of IFES. I would make, I suppose, two observations about the evolution of elections and trends in election administration over the past 30 years. One quite positive and one less so. On the positive side, and our colleague from AWEB mentioned this to a degree, we've seen great progress in the technical administration of elections in many countries around the world. And there are, of course, a range of reasons for that, national authorities first and foremost, but all the organizations represented at this conference have also contributed to the improvement in the technical administration of elections in so many countries around the world. There are new challenges that come about, new tools, new technologies that are developed. We all have to continue to enhance our skills and abilities in the technical administration of elections as the context changes. But overall, we've seen great progress in that field. On the contrary side, though, I think we've seen a very significant deterioration in many places, at least, in the context in which elections take place. The Kenya example was just cited. Even where the technical administration of elections is done well, the environment is increasingly so poisoned where the ability for the elections to truly reflect the will of the electorate is compromised. And this trend is much more recent, I would say, and has greatly accelerated in the last 5, 7, or 8 years. And we see new threats to democracy and elections. Most obvious is misinformation, deliberate, organized campaigns of misinformation to undermine people's faith in the elections, faith in political parties and democratic leaders. There are cyber threats, the way that money is used, and I know that's going to be a subject, or is a subject of this conference. And so even while we have to continue to develop our organization's abilities to support partners responsible for the technical administration of election, we also have to be much better at understanding these evolving threats to the fundamental role of elections in democracy, and developing programmatic tools and capabilities to address those threats. And because of the serious nature of these threats and their rapid evolution, being able to identify and develop ways to combat them is beyond the ability of any one organization. And it's really valuable for us to work together. And so I think this conference represents a great opportunity for those committed to democratic elections in the current environment to come together, share experiences and perspectives, and talk about how we can, through even enhanced collaboration, do a better job as the situation continues to evolve in the years ahead. And I'm sure 30 years from now, when ACEEO is celebrating its 60th anniversary, there'll be much to look back on in terms of the success that has been achieved through that kind of collaboration. Thank you, Secretary General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bambury. Yes, maybe after 30 years, we're just saying that, oh, that was the old time when we were in the 30th years only, and we were young at that time. Yes, I definitely agree with you with the negative trends as a political environment. We just discussed this morning with bilaterally that for us it seems that we are again in the beginning of the 90s, when the political environment was more or less the same than today, but was for different reasons, because then of course the politician was a little bit, let's say, suspicious about how an election could be democratic. But now again, this political environment there is absolutely a negative effect on the technical implementation of the election. But of course, for different reasons, the misinformation is it's a huge issue. Let's move to Mexico City now. I'm calling Lorenzo Cordova, who's the president of the National Electoral Institute of Mexico, and then happy to see Mr. Cordova again. We just signed a few weeks back there. We continued our cooperation, so we signed the continuation of our cooperation agreement. So it's very good to see you, Mr. President. Please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Secretary General. First of all, I'd like to share my compliments with ACEEO 30th anniversary. And in this intervention, I will follow the line that just settled my dear Tony Bambury in its intervention. In the last 30 years, many things have changed in democratic aspects. The third wave of democratizations has spread democracy in many new countries in Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe. In a general perspective, we can say definitely that authoritarian governments, both military dictatorships and totalitarian regimes, have transit toward democratic forms of government, thanks to the settlement of free and fair elections, obviously with different grades of democratic electoral integrity. But no one can deny the democratic process we have seen in this period. Despite that, democracy is not as safe yet. In the last decade, at least, new phenomena are challenging and threatening democracies. Let me just announce, because of the time, some of those. The new challenges I'll see, and I will only mention 3 of them. Tony has already mentioned some other ones, but I will focus just in 3. The first one is the dissatisfaction and discontent with democratic results caused because the incapability of many democratic governments to solve the unaccomplished promises of democracy. This is a phenomenon that erodes on its, particularly the basic democratic institutions such as political parties or parliaments. The second challenge I would mention is the fake news, misinformation, and disinformation phenomena, items around which we have had several and long discussions in the last 5 years at least. The problem is not the rising of fake news. Those have been existing along the political life all around the life of humanity. The fact is that new technologies are provoking this phenomena, acquires a new the fact of the new challenge that we have faced on. The third challenge I would mention, obviously, is the COVID-19 pandemic that imposes our democracies to solve and to improve, get solutions to make that elections and democracy do not become another victim from the virus. But I would like to finish mentioning 2 risks which we have to add to the challenges I have mentioned. The first risk is the polarization, the political polarization, which is not new, it's true. But in recent times, that polarization have been complemented with an anti-democratic value. I would say the anti-democratic value for excellence, which is intolerance. Intolerance and polarizations could provoke a very complicated environment to recreate democracy in our society. And the second risk I would mention is that the fact that we are seeing, particularly in recent years, an increasing animosity, and in many cases, an open confrontation and disqualification of the EMB's work in many countries. Brazil, Peru, Mexico are just some examples of these new phenomena, this preoccupant phenomena. And there are cases, warning cases of these new tendencies, I would like to underline, which could compromise the viability of democracy toward free and fair elections. My warning comes, or this warning comes, that the fact that this disqualification in many cases comes from new actors. It's not new that a political party which loses an election disqualify in some cases the electoral results and even the actuation of EMBs. But the fact is that this new phenomena is coming from governments, from ruling parties, or from governmental circuits. I think this is a phenomenon in which we have focused and discussed is still contained in some few cases, but there is a possibility that these kind of attacks against the electoral organization, the electoral authorities, could spread in other countries. And obviously, I just would say that this is a phenomena that compromises independence and the integrity of elections, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cordova, and especially mentioning the attacks coming from the political arena against the EMBs, and of course also about the polarization and intolerance, which is of course, as you said, this is not new, but yet this is coming in a new format. So those definitely has a risk on the independence of the electoral management bodies, which is, I think we all agree that this is one of our fundamental right. Thank you so much, and let's now move to the representative of International IDEA, and then I'm calling Mr. Massimo Tommasoli, who is the director of the global programs, and at the same time he is the permanent observer for International IDEA to the United Nations. Mr. Tommasoli, thank you for joining us, and please take your mic and screen.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. And first of all, I want to join the other speakers and friends in congratulating you and your association on your 30th anniversary. The question that you're posing is a crucial one, and there are many things that have already been said, so I will not repeat them. I would like, first of all, to stress that the main change over the last 30 years has probably been the shift of focus from elections as an event to electoral processes. And this has actually allowed all of us to take into account some of the contextual elements that many have recalled when it comes to the challenges to elections with integrity. Because many of the things that may jeopardize the relevance and effectiveness of elections happen well ahead of election day or just after election day. So that has been a major understanding by the electoral community, this shift to considering the electoral cycle and not simply elections as events. Well, we can't deny that challenges are there, misinformation, challenges also related to the advances that exist in the field. New technologies are great enablers, but they pose also new challenges. Money in politics and political finance, another element. And the delegitimization of the independence of EMBs is clearly one of the aspects. I would say even the indicators of how conditions in a democracy may worsen. And here I would like to stress another big change over the last years, which has been the institutionalization of international and domestic election observation, which is a very powerful tool in promoting democratic elections. These may serve as a mechanism not only to assess the quality of an electoral process, but also to identify priority areas of support for electoral reform. And it has been used as a mechanism to apply peer pressure on countries to engage in electoral reforms. Here, the notion of internationally accepted norms and standards is important. And finally, I would highlight a positive element which emerged from the resilience shown by democracies under the conditions of the pandemic. And this is the trend of the emergence of the importance of special voting arrangements, namely postal voting, early voting, mobile ballot box voting, and out-of-country voting, in order to include and allow for participation even under the very difficult and special conditions posed by the pandemic. Thank you very much, Secretary General.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Tomassori, especially mentioning the the difference between the E-Day and the, let's say, the rest of the whole electoral process, as we many times saw during the different observation that the E-Day is kind of display or display window or something like this. Everything goes well, but what is going before and after, even we might not able to observe, or this is definitely the space for any the misleading of the electoral processes. So I think it's definitely a valid point. Let's move to the OSCE ODIHR, and I'm happy to see Megan Fitzgerald just next to me. So let me first congratulate to Megan for her appointment as the head of the electoral department in the OSCE ODIHR. It's a few months, maybe a few weeks ago. So Megan, please take your mic.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored to be participating today. And like my other colleagues, I want to join them in congratulating you on the 30 years. It's interesting to note and highlight, and maybe relevant for the discussion on this topic, that it's also ODIHR's 30th anniversary this year, from when it was established as the Office for Free Elections. And that brings me to discussing some of the things we've seen over the 30 years and the changes we've seen in the election environment. Back in the 90s, as you said, there were some similarities that we could have drawn between the environment or the level of trust that we had in the election administration and the election process. However, I don't think we can say the same about the commitment to putting in place standards for democratic elections. Back in the 90s, ACEEO members that are also OSCE members made strong commitments to holding themselves and others to international standards for genuine democratic elections. Over the last 30 years, we've seen a decrease in this enthusiasm and this commitment to establishing these standards and holding themselves and others to these standards. But first, positively, over the last 30 years, we have seen a lot of work done on the legal frameworks for elections, and they've been strengthened, further detailed, clarified, and worked on over and over again to provide for a better framework for the election processes and better protect citizens' rights. They also more clearly define the role of EMBs and better protect their independence. As my colleague from IFES mentioned, this has led to improvements in the technical administration, which has greatly improved over the years. Legal frameworks also more strongly address election violations and have adapted over the years to address new violations that we are seeing. Election management bodies have also constantly improved and built on their experiences and have played a bigger role in protecting citizens' rights. Here, ACEEO also as a peer-to-peer forum plays a key role in this, giving election management bodies the opportunity to learn from each other. As my colleague from International IDEA mentioned, and I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise, one of the trends I would like to highlight is that over the last 30 years, we have indeed seen a recognition of the need for election observation and an institutionalization of that mechanism in the legal frameworks and in the practices of ACEEO states. Also, positively, despite the intolerances that my colleague from Mexico mentioned, we saw an increased commitment to working on the participation of women and persons with disabilities. On the negative end, along with a decline in commitment that I already mentioned, we have seen related changes in trust in government and those organizing elections, frankly. As multiple colleagues have mentioned, this is often because of a perceived or real influence of control over those organizing the elections, and control in the government's or the ruling party's ability to shape and the commission at all levels and the leadership of those commissions, whether this is real or perceived, as I mentioned. Declines have also been noted and seen in turnout, and in particular, there's a constant challenge over the last decades in youth participation, which is a topic I know, a special topic of this year's conference, and we'll be discussing a bit more later. And now with COVID, we see a drastic shift as we have, as we all have to together address these new challenges. What election management bodies can do to educate voters and encourage their participation is even more important now in light of the recent challenges the pandemic has posed. And this has also led to a renewed interest in working together and learning from each other that we've noted over the years. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. And I think that the commitment to the standards at the electoral management bodies is still there. Well, no, the question is that how the political arena can let's say, work towards these standards. Thanks so much again. And the last in this round, I'm calling the United Nations Electoral Assistance Division, which will be represented by Hassan Sesai, who is the Senior Electoral Political Affairs Officer and the team leaders as well. So let's jump to New York. Hassan, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Sonoki. And I join previous speakers to congratulate you on your 30th anniversary. We're very pleased to be partners with you over these years, and we look forward to continuing this partnership. Apologies from our director, who is unfortunately unable to join us today because he other commitments in the UN General Assembly that is ongoing. Just like the ACEEO, 30 years ago in the United Nations, the framework for UN electoral assistance as we know it today was established by the UN General Assembly, and the Secretary General appointed a focal point to coordinate UN electoral assistance to member states to ensure consistency and coherence across the UN system. Also 30 years ago, and in the past years, the General Assembly has developed and reaffirmed a number of principles that are the foundation of our work. That includes respect for sovereignty, norm-based, promote inclusiveness, broad national support. And as you all know, we only engage with countries on the basis of a request from them and or a mandate from the Security Council or General Assembly. What we've witnessed is the demand for UN electoral assistance has actually been strong throughout this period, and the number of requests has continued to grow in recent years. But despite the consistent number of member states requesting UN electoral assistance, what we have witnessed is an evolution in the nature of the requests we receive from member states. Unlike in the early years when the UN was required to conduct and organize elections for member states, you go back to Cambodia, Namibia, where we would supervise elections, Timor-Leste, where we certified and verified elections, Fiji and Burundi, where we observe elections. The request has evolved over the years. What we now see is more specialized requests by member states in the area of ICT support, voter registration and database support, and also dealing with social media. These are the new specialized requests we get from member states. This is largely in part due to the growing capacity of member states to administer their own elections and less dependent on international organizations, including the UN, to help massively to support their elections. Another trend we've seen is also a regional cooperation among electoral administration, and the presence of the Arab EMB here with us today is a testament to that cooperation at regional level. We also have ECONEC in the West African region that is a group of elections commission coming together to facilitate South-South cooperation and the sharing of experiences. So this is a positive trend that we see. But we also see challenges and opportunities of election management bodies in an increasingly digital, mobile, and social media environment. Again, previous speakers talked about this, but this is a challenge posed to electoral management bodies. They can use the opportunities of social media and a digital environment, but it also comes with significant challenges for electoral management bodies. And finally, the pandemic highlighted, the linkages between technical and political facets of elections. And I wouldn't go too much on that because other previous speakers have actually highlighted these linkages and the challenges the pandemic posed to many electoral management bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sesai, especially mentioning the independence in the sense of when you or other organizations supporting electoral management bodies, and they have to stand their own leg after the end of the support. So I think this is important to see that without the support of the international organization, the electoral management bodies will be able to perform their job without the support continuing. So this kind of transmission is also very important. Your colleagues, we ended with the first round. It was a little bit longer than expected, but I think that was absolutely on the subject. I forgot to mention at the beginning that, of course, it's those who are in the online arena that you can type any question into the chat, and of course, at the end, ending the third round, I also turn to the audience here in the room in Bucharest, just to ask a quick question, and we are expecting a quick reaction from the participants. No, but let's move to the second round. If you, let's say, would be even more faster, that the topic is about the role of the international organization and cooperation. Let me give you my, let's say, favorite example. Is not favorite not in a positive meaning, but in a negative meaning, that we all had, taking into account this 9 organization together, we all had a project on the voter registration. And of course, putting everything together, a voter registration, okay, there are some aspects of the voter registration, some method, would it be a central registry, population registry, or the different voter registration? I think we put everything together at least 10 times. So would it be an efficient, let's say, working method, or do we need more cooperation? Or on the other hand, how do you see, did we do enough in our terms of our different mission? If you look around the world, I think that the definite answer is no, because if you see that there are, if we just take the fundamental rights regarding to the election, how many countries are not meeting these fundamental rights, that the list is even getting longer and longer. So how we can fulfill our mission, and how we can work together in order to be more efficient, and in order to reach more citizens or more voters or more electoral management bodies. So if you have an idea for concrete examples of the future cooperation among us, and that would be advisable if you can say a few words about it. So let's jump back again to ACEEO, to the AWEB, and I'm calling again Kim. Kim, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to briefly talk about kind of the role of international organizations and how they can successfully work together. And I think the ultimate goal of election related international organizations is to address and emphasize the importance of electoral democracy and the universal values of election. And based on this goal, international organizations should be able to facilitate cooperation and coordination among members. Then how could international organizations deepen the cooperation among members? Well, international organizations should constantly identify and set the agenda that may have a great effect on their members. In other words, they identify common challenges and issues shared by their members and facilitate exchange of information and experience by various means. For example, immediately after the outbreak of COVID-19, many member EMBs of AWEB found themselves in trouble. In order to identify the common challenges and seek solutions, the AWEB Secretariat decided to organize a series of webinars covering and targeting all 5 continents. So those EMBs that were scheduled to hold elections expressed their concerns and challenges. And those EMBs who had already held elections in the midst of the pandemic shared their success stories and failures. And I think this kind of cooperation can also be achieved between international organizations by building strong partnerships. Different organizations have different strengths and different weaknesses. So in order to complement the relatively weak part, AWEB has received a lot of generous support and cooperation from other international organizations such as IFES and International IDEA. So to sum up, we international organizations should continuously set important agenda and work together on that agenda with partner organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Let's move to the Arab EMBs. I'm calling you again, Hisham. Hisham, please.
Yes, I want to touch base on one important issue, and maybe this is applied within the Arab region, but I have no doubt that it applies, somewhere else, which is what is the role of EMB within the community itself? Because I have no doubt that, especially the newly, established independent EMBs within our region are carrying out election operation to the best of their abilities according to our international standard. However, one question always arises concerning the real role of EMB. Is the role of an EMB confined only to the mere implementation of election calls? Or can an EMB be more proactive in promoting democratic values within the community it serves? I mean, this question needs to be addressed by the electoral regional organizations. Related question could be also entail what is the added value EMBs can provide apart from the conduct of election operation. How can an EMB engage in promoting political participation across different sectors of the society, addressing issues related to women, youth, people with disabilities, and so on? How electoral management bodies build electoral knowledge capacity within the society? How can be creative and efficient in positioning themselves towards fostering ties with the stakeholders? Moreover, and most importantly, how can we change as international organization or regional organization or together the internal management mindset of electoral management body to that end? question that could be addressed within the platform. I have proposed earlier to provide more insight on different experiences across the globe. I know my personal, a number of excellent experiences in Latin America and Europe and everywhere. In a nutshell, what we try to embrace is to change the role of the EMB from a mere implementer to an agent for change within their community. I think this is a topic that we should all focus on in the future to deepen our relationship with our stakeholders. Thank you, Zolti.
Thank you very much, Hisham, for your concrete proposal as well. And let's move back to the Council of Europe Venice Commission. Pierre, please take the mic and the screen.
Thank you, Zsolt. Fortunately, the experience of the Council of Europe, and in particular the Venice Commission in the field of international cooperation in the electoral field, is mainly positive. For nearly 20 years already, joint opinions of the Venice Commission and ODIHR on electoral legislation have been systematic. This quickly put an end to a problem which had appeared in the infancy of both organizations, that is, forum shopping. The Venice Commission approach, now both organizations are also complementary because the Venice Commission is a legal body specialized in constitutional and international law issues, focusing on the implementation of the principles, while ODIHR, of course, based on the same standards, address more thoroughly technical, practical issues. This complementarity does not only appear in the drafting opinions, but in the work on all documents in the electoral field, because the ODIHR has a very precious input through its participation in the Council for Democratic Elections, a body, Council of Europe body which examines all Venice Commission documents in the electoral field. And I must say that IFES, the International IDEA, also take part regularly in this work. And all those organizations, including the European Parliament and the European External Action Service, are consulted on the draft opinions and reports. The OC Parliamentary Assembly and the ACEEO also took part in the work of the Council for Democratic Elections in the past, and they are, of course, welcome to come back if interested. I would also like to mention the European Conference of Electoral Management Bodies, co-organized each year by the Venice Commission, and in general an electoral managed bodies, such as the next 29th of October online, the National Election Commission of Estonia. And a number of international organizations take part each time in this meeting. I think now, of course, to ACEEO, IDEA, ODIHR, IFES, I see here, and perhaps I have missed some of you. Well, our friend Manuel Carrillo, of course, took part in a number of times, and also Mr. Cordoba, but I want to do a full list in order not to, of course, I will have forgotten a number of you or other people. I don't talk about the members of the electoral administrations, of course. But cooperation of the Council of Europe with other international organizations goes much further than the Venice Commission. In particular, the Parliamentary Assembly and the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe are participating in election observation missions, and for what concerns the Assembly, they are for national elections. These observation missions are jointly managed with ODIHR, the OC Parliamentary Assembly, the European Parliament in particular, and lead normally to not to joint reports yet, but joint statements, press releases, to avoid forum shopping I think this is very important to avoid foreign shopping, which would delight bad faith stakeholders. So I think we are on the right track, and we have been in the last decades. From time to time, we can get a bit out of the track, but we should not rest on our laurels. The international community has to speak with one voice to have full credibility, in particular at the occasion of election observation. And this has been made possible through the developments in implementation of international standards throughout the 3 last decades. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Pierre. Especially I think the one voice is very important to speak about this. Let's move to ACEEO. I'm calling again Baidesu. Baidesu, please take the mic and the screen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. General Secretary. Yeah, from our perspective, international organization, both governmental and non-governmental, have an essential and multifaceted role to play. In addition to technical and financial support, they can work to develop avenues and action for consolidating democratic gains, advocacy with national authorities, and increased support for credible stakeholders. I think it is important for those international organizations to work closely with authorities to put a focus on democratic gains for themselves and for the people also. And I think also that for this to happen, the various stakeholders must necessarily collaborate, and if not combine their effort. At ACEEO, we are already used to work with most of the organization. We have cooperated with the Santa Cata, with IFES, with NDI. We are also working now with International IDEA to support the African Union in some specific country, post-election conflict countries. And then beyond the network and circumstantial meetings, we think also that there is a need to work on an approach that reinforces each other. Instead, having intervention that can come and counsel the benefit of the job did or done by another organization. And experience has shown that it is no longer enough to simply evaluate an electoral process. It is necessary to go beyond and work on capitalizing what we have done, our conclusion, our recommendation, because most of the time, the international organization stopped their job after the election, after the result has been released. And of course, we start now working on follow-up of electoral observation recommendation, but we still have more to do also after the electoral process in order to work more closely with electoral stakeholders at national level, with authorities, in order to correct in the electoral law or in the way the electoral process is conducted, what needs to be corrected to prepare the next electoral processes. I think that is one of the approach we can follow. And at ACEEO, we have this opportunity to work from time to time in some specific country with organization. And we are also proud to be part of this network set down by ACEEO, and we thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Baidesu. So of course, I think the follow-up of the result of the electoral observation, I think that Megan can join to this one at later, because this is definitely a crucial issue. Would it be at the technical level, or would it be at the political level, or how it will be followed? Thank you very much. Then let's move to IFS again. I'm calling Anthony Bembury. Anthony, please take the mic.
Thank you, Secretary General. And I'm glad that this issue is on the table. It's such an important one. I also really appreciate the comments that have been made by my fellow panelists. I think there's a lot that I've learned from them, and I'm sure others have as well. The issue of collaboration is so important. It's always beneficial, of course, to work together, to learn from each other. But as the previous round of comments made clear, the nature of the challenges before us in ensuring secure elections and a positive democratic environment, that challenge has evolved a lot. The threats are different, and hence there are new actors that have an important role to play in promoting electoral integrity and a positive electoral environment. For instance, the role of journalist groups, media organizations, academic research institutions who can help us understand the nature of organized misinformation campaigns, technology companies. So it's no longer just the traditional actors who've been involved in promoting free and fair elections with whom we need to collaborate. We need to broaden that group of actors who are actively participating in these discussions. I'd also say that collaboration is context specific, and depending upon the main challenges in a given country or region, there are going to be different needs, and hence different actors playing the most important roles. I would say, though, that the starting point really needs to be a mindset of collaboration and a recognition of the importance of committing to it, even while we all recognize that it takes time and effort, money sometimes due to travel. And in IFES, we adopted a new mission statement about 2.5 years ago, which is together we build democracies that deliver for all. That first word, together, is very purposeful and emphasizes our commitment to collaboration. And I look forward to working through the ACEEO and with other organizations represented on this panel and participating in this conference. The stakes are too high. We have to redouble our effort to learn from each other with a humble approach and recognize that we can't all do it on our own, and it's through collaboration that we will do the best in advancing our shared objectives. So thank you, Secretary General.
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, we do not want to take over the IFS mission that Together for the Democracy, but I think this is the context, or this is the work or the mission we have to really do together. Let's move to INE. I'm calling again Mr. Cordova, the President of INE. Mr. Cordova, please.
Thank you so much, Secretary General. Well, I would like to underline the importance of the international support and cooperation, which from my point of view is fundamental, coming from international organizations. And I think this cooperation is fundamental, at least in two levels. The first one is the one who helps to identify, to evaluate, and to share good practices, efforts, settlements in particular cases with the EMBs in their mission to organize free and fair elections. I think the role of international organizations in this level is fundamental to strengthen capabilities of the EMBs to do better their work towards the horizontal cooperation. And I would like to mention two recent examples of this fundamental role of international organizations. One is the role they played to face, in the last year and a half, the organization of elections in the middle of COVID-19 pandemics. That was an inedited scenario for every EMB all around the world. So the identifying good practices, what you have to do, which is very easy to say in the sheet, but to translate it in a very complex organization, to have to move or mobilize millions of people is very hard. And the other example is the huge reflection and discussion around in the last years around fake news and disinformation as a new threat to democracies, to settle strategies, good practices to face this problem. On the other level, the importance of international organizations is linked with the role of international observers. Mexican case, I think, is a good case to show all the benefits of international observation. And I'm saying that as the chair of an observed institution, as well as part of several missions of international observation, especially in Latin America, but not only. I think in this level, the participation of international organizations is fundamental, at least for three fundamental reasons. First, to create a context of exigence to EMBs, to do our work better, because we know we are being observed, our strengths, but also our mistakes could be underlined in international observation reports. So I think it's a context of exigence which is fundamental for us. In second place, what international observation help to settle a trust safety built around the organization of elections, and the increase in that sense, the cost of disqualifications of electoral process coming from unfair players. So it's also a very important basis of trust construction around an electoral process. And third, and finally, international observation is fundamental to improve electoral integrity. And I would like to underline in this event the participation of many of you as part of international observation missions in the last June's election in Mexico, general elections in Mexico. Many of you are in as good friends, and I think in the most, not just the largest, but also the most complicated election ever organized in Mexico, international observation was fundamental to blindate the democratic electoral process from the disqualification, the menaces, the open menaces that the electoral institution received during electoral process, coming mainly from the government, and in a phenomena, I'd like to repeat that, which is not Mexican phenomena. We are seeing that in Brazil, for instance. We are talking about the two largest democracies in Latin America, from which I think international observation has a long life to see in the future still. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And if we are speaking about collaboration, I think we all have to appreciate the role of Mexico in the collaboration among the Latin American EMBs, because you were always taking a lead or the main role in this cooperation. So we really appreciate that you always bring to this common experiences to the international arena. Let's move to the international IT. I'm calling again Mr. Tomassoli. Please take your mic and screen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. I think that we heard essentially three types of collaboration or objectives for collaboration that have been exemplified by the speakers so far. One is in the field of norm setting. The second one is in the area of experience sharing. And the third one is capacity building. And I would like to point at how these three areas are actually interconnected. Norm setting is very important, and the ACEEO region has had many examples, and there were many alluded to by previous speakers, of how developing codes of conduct or good practice may really help strengthen institutions in delivering on their mandates. That is an essential feature. What is probably missing yet is all the area of global norms development. It is probably easier to identify norms when it comes to discussing regional or sub-regional levels. It is more difficult to find an agreement on a global level. And that is where we should work more in the next decades. One example of a growing international global norm is in fact about international election observation. And I would refer here to the Declaration of Principles, of which many of the institutions sitting around this table are either founding members or active participants. And there, if you look at the follow-up to just adopting the declaration, you have a very good roadmap of what is needed. For example, under the Declaration of Principles, there are working groups, thematic working groups that are assessing the broad aspects of technology in elections, from biometric voter registration to the role of social media, to identify trends and challenges and propose solutions and best practice. I think we can do more of that. My last point is about the interlinkages between the different levels I just mentioned, and how can we really feed capacity building in particular with the lessons that we learn through experience sharing and compliance with the global and regional norms that we are contributing to defining. And that is a very important aspect. There were examples again by previous speakers. I think that the key message for us is that capacity building should become less and less top-down, and it should be based really on a double movement between the top-down and the bottom-up, so that as democracy assistance actors, all the actors, including local and domestic actors, are really heard and contribute to building more effective democracy assistance initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tomassoli. You took my job. That is, you definitely assessed the discussion we have, of course, but of course we are still listening to the ODIHR and you. And Megan, please take it over.
Thanks. I agree. He did a great job at summarizing some of the key areas that we need to collaborate on. I'd also like to reiterate what my colleague said from the Venice Commission about the need and our role and obligation to be on the same page and in order to assist and not do any harm, that we need to speak with one voice. I think that's an important point. Naturally, I would start with observation. International organizations have an obligation to constantly work to update their methodology and adapt to the changes in how elections are conducted, so that our observations and the subsequent recommendations are useful to election management bodies. I think that's what my colleague from IDEA was referring to, and some of what the work of the Declaration of Principles working groups are looking at. New areas include social networks. This also includes working with new partners, like my colleague from IFES mentioned. we also have an obligation to look at what election management bodies can do in a proactive manner, including on youth participation, but also other proactive measures that election officials can and should be taking to protect the rights of the citizens. We have a role to play outside of the immediate observation, and we do actively cooperate with all of you on follow-up. We aim to provide a platform for sharing of good practices, which was also highlighted by my colleagues, and ideally give you the opportunity to learn from one another. And this should continue to be a focus of international organizations. And as I mentioned in the previous question, COVID is brought new light to this need and a new relevance to the international organizations' roles there. And international organizations have to be prepared to be able to assist all those working on elections to face these new challenges, such as COVID. And to meet this new need and new demand for our assistance. As Pierre mentioned, together with the Venice Commission, we are working to develop new guidelines and new guidance. And that was also mentioned by my colleague from International ACEEEO on norm setting and the need for global norms development. Unfortunately, that was what I started with saying, that where I think there's less movement in the OSCE region towards, unfortunately, at the moment. But this is one area where definitely we could benefit from further cooperation, and we could particularly cooperate on addressing the topics of this year's conference of party and campaign financing and the youth participation, and particularly online participation. But for time's sake, I'll stop there.
Yes, thank you very much, Megan. And let's move to the UN. I'm going to them, Mr. Sasai.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, and thanks to previous speakers. As many of you are aware, unless specifically mandated to do so by the Security Council, the United Nations does not organize, certify, supervise, or observe elections, and these types of assistance are rarely mandated. What we do is mostly technical assistance, which is the largest form of UN electoral assistance, and we have developed expertise in this area over the years by supporting over 100 member states in the past 3 decades. But as we know, technical assistance is not an end in itself, and it works best when it is part of a broader approach to promote peace and stability. Consequently, the UN has been engaged in mediation and good offices functions to underline the political nature of electoral processes. Mediation and good offices are better done in collaboration with regional or sub-regional organizations. Regional organizations have a comparative advantage also in election observation, and previous speakers already touched on this. Election observation is highly complementary to the work we do in the UN, providing technical assistance. So we see a lot of linkages between what regional organizations do and what we do in the UN, and we highly value this complementarity. Again, Massimo talked about institutionalizing international and domestic observation, and I think Megan also further highlighted the importance of international election observation. And that is why we in the United Nations strongly support the Declaration of Principles, and we continue to work with the over 50 organizations worldwide that have endorsed these principles. But beyond the international observation, we've all seen the very important role played by citizens, non-partisan citizens organizations organizations in monitoring their elections. And we do support the Declaration of Global Principles for Non-Partisan Election Observation and Monitoring by Citizens Organizations, which is now endorsed by over 299 organizations and network. Again, COVID really points to the important role played by such domestic organizations. Finally, we do maintain a long-standing partnership with regional and intergovernmental organizations. We would continue to promote South-South and triangular cooperation with partners engaged in electoral assistance. But let me just reiterate the points I think Pierre made and Megan also touched on it. For this broad engagement to work, coherence in messaging among various international actors is critical, because we've seen in many contexts where different messages from the international partners get exploited. So we should really keep this in context whenever we provide support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sessayes. I think the DOP, so the Declaration of Principles on different issues, I think this is definitely a good example of the cooperation of the different or international or regional organization. So if we can agree on different topics, I think it will be it will be easier to let's say looking for the implementation via the different election observation mission. Thanks so much for this second round. Of course, we all agree that the cooperation should be strengthened, as Mr. Tomassoli rightly assessed to repeat his assessment, because this, I think, this three element is one of the most important. From the ACEEEO side, we can promise that, of course, that we are sharing our, let's say, plans or experiences with you, and if any kind of new project, we are always looking for a partnership, not just doing it alone, but let's say to if it is possible to let's say to put together a greater team or a greater project, just to avoid overlapping, and also, let's say, to save the financial resources, which is, let's say, quite hectic, which is available at the international level. That would it be coming from the UN or from any other big donors or from the European Union. Let's jump to the third part. We definitely have a very limited time. That is very nice topic as well, the future of the election. Just again, let me have let's say, one of my personal remarks on this. We had a continuous discussion with Paul de Gregorio about the status of the internet voting, and I think we started it somewhere in the 90s. And we hope that next year we have an internet voting, and we did the same around 2005 and 2015, and so on and so on. And of course, there are some good examples for the internet voting, but in the 21st century, the 21st year in the 21st century, this is definitely not the universal, or the technical possibilities are there. Of course, I do not want to narrow the discussion into this subject, but please bear in mind the new generation born with a mobile phone in the baby cot. So, and this is let's say, our main topic for the conference tomorrow as well, that this new generation definitely will indicate radical changes in the electoral processes as well. So if you just pick up maybe one or two challenges, what you think that will be the challenges in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, or how do you see the development of the electoral processes in the very near future. So you have 1 or 2 minutes maximum. So please, let's start again with the event, and I'm calling again Kim.
Thank you, Secretary General. In the interest of time, I'd like to briefly talk about 2 points: technology and youth participation as the determinants of the future elections. To begin with, we are living in the age of information and age of technology. Every area of our life is affected by technology. So I don't think election is an exception. For better or worse, I think it's inevitable to use new technologies in elections. Of course, the degree of the use of technology and when to use what technology may differ from country to country. But I can't imagine the future of elections without new technologies in them. Another aspect is that low voter turnout has been a heavy issue addressed so many times in election-related seminars and conferences. And as we all know, low voter turnout may result in questioning not only the legitimacy of election results, but also election itself as a legitimate system. At the center of the issue is young people's poor participation in election and politics. It seems like a global phenomenon that young people are not interested in election and politics. Of course, their participation rates vary from country to country. There may be many factors that discourage young people from participating in election and politics. Political culture, economic conditions, and cultural factors should be all investigated to solve this issue. Conversely, on the other hand, in some countries, young people are politically polarized, which leads to electoral violence and hatred toward a particular group of people. In both cases, the future of election doesn't appear very much bright. Therefore, we international organizations and the international and election stakeholders should continuously look into the issues associated with technology and young people's participation as the determinant of the future elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move to the Arab BMBs. I'm calling again Hisham.
Do you hear me? Because I have switched to my mobile. I have something went wrong with my computer. Can you hear me, Zolti?
Yes, it was okay.
All right.
iPhone is okay as well.
Okay. I want to share with you the recent initiative by EMB of establishing the youth network. That network aims at enhancing youth participation in political life within the region through civic education and awareness, through dissemination of best practices, and contributing to the establishment of a viable youth engagement. I mean, creation such a network was a strategic approach that Arab EMB recently has embraced as a regional organization based on the successful launching and the actual commence of work of the network of Arab women in election in 2019. The Arab Women Network for Women in Election aimed at enhancing women political participation, and it managed to partner with regional civil society organizations as well as regional women organization within the region. They are on board of the steering committee for that network. The network managed to make structural changes within Arab EMBs through the creation or strengthening gender units within the management bodies. And the women organizations are working very closely right now and partnering with regional and international organizations such as UNDP, ACEEO, AWEB, SADC, CLAS, UN Women and Venice Commission. Both workshops will be working under the umbrella of Arab EMB, but enjoy independency in their missions. We are planning to launch the youth network during the upcoming General Assembly meeting early 2022, in which we will be presenting the status of youth participation in the region. And by then, you will be all invited to join that important meeting of the General Assembly, as well as the workshop, and looking forward to partner with you in this endeavor. Thank you, Zolti.
Thank you very much, Hisham. Hisham will definitely join to this meeting. Let's move to Strasbourg finally. Well, this is for the third time. Pierre.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. The future will be partly like the past, I'm afraid, with its good and bad aspects. But it will. The world is changing, and as the former participant said, digital technologies are developing. They are developing, and I would not address youth participation as such, but it's of course for the youth in particular, the digital aspect is fundamental. I won't focus on the various stages of the electoral process, to be short, but we know that already now there can be digital technologies from the registration of voters to the counting of results and announcement and tabulation and announcement. Not yet up to the settlement of electoral disputes, but who knows? Let us come directly to what I think is the most fundamental change, the one which has to be really addressed, and the biggest challenge. This is the development of online media and social networks and their effect on the electoral campaign. In the Council of Europe, this in general, digital technologies, artificial intelligence are a point on which the organization focuses. But concerning this, digital technology and elections, the Venice Commission adopted principles on a fundamental right compliant use of these digital technologies to find the right balance between different fundamental rights and interests and stake. And then the principles are centered on freedom of expression in the digital environment, removal by private companies of clearly defined third-party content from the internet at the request of a competent impartial body, the open internet and net neutrality, personal data protection, periodical review of rules and regulations on political advertising, and on the responsibility of internet intermediaries, regulations and institutional capacities to fight cyber threats, international cooperation, and public-private cooperation, as well as self-regulatory mechanisms. So you see, it's really a large program. And in the international intergovernmental sector, the Council of Europe is now preparing a recommendation on electoral communication and media coverage of election campaigns, which should be adopted this year, hopefully, and guidelines also on the use of ICT in electoral process. So really the issue of digital technology, I repeat what was already said, but is crucial, and we see all the aspects which can be addressed. For the general evolution of democracy, of course, I can't, and of elections, which are its core, I can't do a prediction. Will the world be less or more democratic in 30 years? And in which countries will there be progress or regression? We don't know, but we are not powerless. Our role, the role not only of all present at this panel, but of all participants to this conference, is to ensure that elections proceed in conformity with international standards. In other words, as my compatriot, the Swiss writer Denis Drougemont said, passivity starts when instead of saying what I do, you ask what will happen. So my conclusion is, what can we do? Let us do it and not be passive.
Yes, thank you, Pierre. I think we totally agree that let's do it. Let's move to ASA right now. I'm calling again by this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Through its various functions, the election remain by far the fundamental element in deepening of democracy. But there is a certain weakness, a certain fatigue of voters, not about election itself, but usually about the quality of the electoral process we are now having, especially in African countries, and also about their variable assessment or geopolitical assessment by organization. For example, in their analysis of election in many African countries, certain organizations and states prefer to emphasizing stability and security to the detriment of other aspects like freedom, like the respect of fundamental rights. And this, the perception of this assessment by the voters is questioning now. And young people especially are increasingly reluctant to participate in electoral process for several reasons. The first one is you want.
I think we lost you by this one.
To run without money, you can. That is the first reason one. And the second one, okay, I was saying that, now it is okay, you can get me?
Yes, yes.
Hello?
We lost you again. I propose to come back to you again at the end, but let's move now to IFS. I'm calling Mr. Bambury again.
Thank you, Secretary General. I'll be brief, and I would like to build on the comments by our colleague from the Venice Commission. And I believe the single biggest challenge to electoral integrity in the years ahead is going to be around misinformation, particularly organized, deliberate misinformation campaigns sponsored by state or non-state actors using increasingly available commercial technology. And this can have a direct impact on elections by spreading misinformation about the actual administration of elections, or indirectly by attacking political candidates, political parties, ideas, groups in a community. And a very significant challenge for electoral management bodies is going to be, how do they grapple with that? What is their role? And I refer to the comment from our colleague from Airbnbs talking about EMBs moving from implementers to agents of change. I think it's a very interesting concept. I don't think it will be possible for EMBs to simply limit themselves to the technical administration of elections if, in a particular context, there is a very detrimental, organized, pervasive misinformation campaigns taking place. And that's an area I think we're going to all have to work together on in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move to Mr. Cordova in Mexico. Mr. President, please.
Thank you so much, Secretary General. I would like, in this last intervention, point out a particular aspect in which I think EMBs are forced to get in with strength and decision in the future. despite all the challenges and the risks we are facing on, democracies all around the world are facing on, which, by the way, are not different in the new democratic countries than the old democratic countries. I think those times are gone. Right now, we're facing, practically all the countries are facing the same challenges and risks for its own democracies. But I think in this new context, and I would like to take on what Tony Bambury says in his first intervention about, you know, the environment in which today we have to recreate democracies. Obviously, EMBs are not responsible, or at least are not the only responsible in which direction that environment evolves. But I think in that context, EMBs, despite the fact that we are compelled to improve our technical and organizational capabilities, obviously, those new challenges forces us to acquire and improve new technologies, to get much accurate technical operations, organizational practices, and so on. Despite that, we are called to become, we are compelled to improve our communicational capabilities. I think in electoral management bodies, despite all the technical and organizational qualities, I insist on that, we have to become former information agencies. We are compelled, we are forced to become pedagogical institutions, and to explain in a very plain, clear, and easy way to understand some technical procedures, some many times obvious steps that we have to take on to organize an election, steps that are fundamental in the construction, you know, of the trust around an election, and that in many cases we assume everybody, every citizen, is already known, and that's not true. In a context of post-truth, in a context of misinformation, in a context in which, in many cases, even governments claim that some frauds are being organized by the EMBs, that EMBs are not playing their impartial and autonomous agency's role. In that context, we are forced, inevitably, to become a pedagogical and a communicational institutions. Our communication, social communication areas must be strengthened. Every campaign has a war room. We are compelled, we're forced to settle peace rooms to define communicational strategies. Unfortunately, in the context, in that environment, which not depends only from us, we have a role to play, sorry. And that's it, to contribute with clear, easy to understand, plain information. That's part of the transparency that sustain any democracy. That's part of the information rights that sustain any democracies, and we're part of it. We have a responsibility to build that trust, which depends on the easy, clear, opportune information. Unfortunately, we have to discuss that. This is a new context, and I think, despite all the challenges, despite all the risks we are facing on, in part, all those challenges and risks can be, even if not solved, at least faced with most strength if we display this capability, responsibility that we're forced on in the current times. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cordova. Yes, we definitely need to continue the discussion of this context as well. I'm calling again the international idea. Mr. Tomassoli, please take the mic on screen.
Thank you very much. I would say, first of all, that the role of EMBs will be even more prominent in the future. I've participated, given my role, also in conversations on constitution building. And Hassan before made the link between the importance of mediation and the importance of electoral processes. And I see there a very crucial element for the future. EMBs may and are constantly and growingly seen as part of those fourth branch institutions that play a very important role in checks and balances in, I would say, in constitutional frameworks. So that is something that will grow. And as we heard from Lorenzo Cordova, for example, this element of attack on the independence of EMBs is fully consistent with a process of erosion of democratic institutions that may become increasingly pronounced given the rise of authoritarian forces, not only in hybrid and authoritarian regimes. Secondly, I would say that technology is so pervasive that we cannot, as many said, think of the future without considering the role that technology will play. Many refer to the role of technology in voting. I would stress also the importance of technology in political campaigns. And again, that is an uncharted territory in many respects. And all the comments made on misinformation, disinformation, including by Tony, very eloquently, I think, are related also to these. But to just say a word in conclusion on the role of the youth, as you invited us, I would say that electoral processes, as other aspects of democracy building, shall have to address the issue of youth participation by rethinking in depth the issue of inclusion. Again, one of the principles recalled by Hassan that inspires the work of the UN, but in a different perspective. And we could think more of intergenerational inclusion. We had many references in the past. Our conventional wisdom is about exclusion in terms of economic exclusion, for example. But we have to think more of intergenerational exclusion. That means thinking of equality of opportunity, perceived or genuine, from the point of view of the youth. And that requires some creative thinking and thinking of innovatively engaging the youth in participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tomassoli. Megan, please.
Yes, and I'll be very brief because I know we're out of time. When thinking about the future of elections and looking at the discussions today, the main point that I'm left with is that a main theme of the future of elections will be adaptation and the need to adapt. The need to adapt to new changes in technology, new challenges such as misinformation and new formats for campaigning, as my colleague just mentioned. Also, the speed of this adaptation will greatly increase. As we have seen, it's already increased. We need to adapt not only how elections are organized, but also how they are observed on our side. And I think it's very appropriate you linked this question to youth participation. We see that young people do indeed vote less, but we all know that the lack of interest, it's not for a lack of interest, that they just engage differently. And we need to see how we can adapt and how we can adjust to how they engage. Youth definitely use new technologies, and they definitely work on more of a peer-to-peer level and networking and mobilization. But their participation is impacted by some unique challenges, including increased mobility amongst young populations and unemployment. And additionally, we need to look at double the impact of young women or youth with disabilities. Not to preempt, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow's discussion, but some of the things that we need to look to do is to design more youth-friendly legislation and rules on campaign finance, to look at electoral systems that are conducive for young candidates. And I understand that Moldova, our colleagues in Moldova, have special measures for that purpose. But also observers need to look more closely at how we observe, how we assess, and how we provide recommendations on encouraging youth participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Megan. And last words from the UNEID, Mr. Sesai, please.
Thank you, Secretary General. I would like to share 4 quick points on what I see in the future of elections. One is the participation of women in politics. I think more needs to be done globally, and our efforts to convince newer democracies of the importance of meeting these obligations would really be helped by redoubled efforts in many older democracies to lead by example. 2, sustainability. We must continue to place higher priority on national ownership and sustainability. This entails adopting methods and practices that are financially sustainable within the context of the country concerned. Again, I must note a lot has been said about the use of technology. I must note here that expensive technology is neither a panacea for fraud nor a substitute for the integrity and vigilance of electoral commissions, political leaders, observers, and voters. I know there is the law by many EMBs these days to jump into technology. While a lot of benefits have been shared by previous speakers, we should also be cognizant of this fact about the use of technology. 3, the rising impact of social media and online platforms. Again, I won't delve into this too much, but we all see that social media and online platforms will play a critical role moving forward. And finally, responsible political leadership will continue to underpin successful elections. As we all know, candidates and political leaders have a powerful influence on public discourse and on the perception of their followers about an election and its outcome. And political leaders need to be engaged moving forward if we to have credible and transparent elections that are generally accepted by the populace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sesai. And although I promise that we have time for question, but please apologize for that we do not have any time for question. No, but of course, maybe of course you can put any questions during the honorary club. We definitely exceeded our time. The wrong scheduling is always the fault of the Secretary General, so I take it as usual. But I think in the past two hours we have discussed substance for at least 2 or 3 conferences. So I think this is definitely should be continued. So that is also I think will be definitely part of our close collaboration. So let me, of course, we are doing an assessment of this discussion, so you can read it in a few weeks' time. So if some of us will lost it, if you know any words or ideas will be lost, and we can put all the ideas and the contributions together. But I would like to ask colleagues here and the colleagues in the online arena just join me to the round of applause to our speakers. And then let's definitely ask thanks to Kim, Hisham, Pierre, Baidesu, Anthony, Lorenzo, Massimo, Megan, and Hassan for your contribution. And as said, of course, we are ready to continue.